Ready to go, I think. Whenever
Okay.
you're ready.
All right, I'd like to call the meeting back to order after our recess. And I would like to welcome Commissioner Quinn. It's a pleasure to see you, and I understand you have a wonderful briefing prepared for us. And so if you would like to start, I think we are ready for you.
Well, good morning, Representative Umbarger and honored guests. I just want to make sure Steve Lavoie is on.
Yeah, I am here. Nikki, is there any way to turn our cameras on?
You should be allowed to. There's nothing restricting. You are in here as a panelist, Steve, so you should be good to go.
Oh, how about I hit the start video button?
Yeah, that'll work. Try that one.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, I realize, Steve, this is your first time doing this.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Quinn. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Safety, and with me today is Steve Lavoie, who's my Director of Administration. And I want to start by saying Steve does a fantastic job, and I'm truly grateful to have him in this role. Today, we together will present the Governor's recommended FY 22-23 budget for the Department of Safety. The mission of the Department of Safety is to continually enhance the safety, security, and quality of life in New Hampshire through professional, collaborative, and innovative service to all. I'm honored to lead this dedicated team of professionals in the Department of Safety and proud of how each division has responded to the challenges of COVID-19, whether providing support for the COVID-19 response or making significant changes to business processes to ensure that public safety services continue to be delivered during this unprecedented time. Developing a biennial budget is challenging under any circumstances. However, the impact that COVID-19 has had on state revenues made this budget significantly harder to compile. Demand for public safety services continues to increase, salaries and benefits increase, combined with increased equipment, replacement cost, the law enforcement accountability, community and transparency, as we all refer to as LEACT recommendations, and our increased reliance on IT infrastructure and systems have all increased the cost of doing business. These increased costs must be balanced by weaknesses in general funds, highway funds, and turnpike funds, which resulted in a decrease in funding available to the department. Specifically, 7.1% decline in general funds, 9.7% decline in turnpike funds, and an 11.5% decline in highway funds. This budget funds all existing public safety services required to maintain public safety in New Hampshire through FY 22 and 23. However, funding constraints will result in some reductions and delays in service in certain areas. We've worked extremely hard to make the difficult decisions required to minimize the impact that funding restrictions will have over the next biennium. Specifically, this budget more accurately allocates retiree health and DOIT costs across all dedicated funds to reduce the draw on the highway fund and general fund. This budget reduces operating costs, including reduction to equipment replacement and part-time funding to the minimum amounts necessary for the continued delivery of public safety services. This budget shifts some general funded public safety services to existing dedicated funds to ensure uninterrupted delivery of services in FY 22 and 23. These adjustments will need to be revisited in FY 24 and 25 to address concerns surrounding the long-term health of these dedicated funds. Finally, this budget unfunds 50 existing full-time positions, 9 of which are currently filled. Throughout the presentation today, myself and Steve will discuss how these unfunded positions will impact public safety services across New Hampshire. We fully understand the budgetary constraints that COVID-19 has placed on state revenues and have worked hard to minimize the impact on services. Funding all positions is a priority for the department, and we respectfully request that consideration be given to do so if additional revenues become available during this phase of the budget process. Director Lavoy will now spend some time discussing the important public safety mission of each of our 7 divisions and provide a summary of changes, current funding gaps, and the expected impact on service. We're happy to take any questions that you may have throughout the presentation, and I greatly appreciate the interest you have in the Department of Safety. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce, if that's okay, Representative Umberger, Director Steve Lavoy.
That's fine. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Steve Lavoy. I'm the Director of Administration at the Department of Safety. It's nice to see many of you again as we go through our budget process. And for those who I haven't met, I look forward to working with you through this phase of the budget. Can everyone see the presentation screen okay? Yes, good.
Yes, yeah.
All right. So what we've tried to do here is consolidate 150 pages of budget documents, which includes 146 accounting units, into a presentation that's digestible and understandable for you. So hopefully we hit the mark there, but there's a lot going on at the Department of Safety. And I think by the end of this presentation, you'll have a good understanding about what we do, what's funded, and then also where some of our funding concerns are. The first page here is the organizational summary of the department as a whole. So we have 7 divisions within the Department of Safety who are all committed to our mission of continually enhancing the safety, security, and the quality of life in New Hampshire through professional, collaborative, and innovative service to all. In each one of these divisions, you've got the activity number that's listed here. The Division of Administration is 2320, Division of Motor Vehicles 2330, and so on and so forth. So those numbers correspond with our activity numbers within the budget. And so this presentation is built to follow the budget structure as well. And so you'll see that we'll go in order according to these organizations here. So to start off, our overall budget for the Department of Safety, our summary page is shown here. What you'll notice as we work through the presentation, each division we're going to be summarizing in total and providing the pages that correspond to the governor's budget in the upper right-hand corner here. But for FY 22 and 23, the Department of Safety governor's recommended budget is $203.5 million in FY 22, which represents a 5% increase over the FY 21 amount, and $209.3 million in FY 23, which is a 33% increase over the FY 22 amount. What you'll see over here is that the Department of Safety is really a people-driven organization. We provide services to the public. And so 63% of our budget is tied up in salaries and benefits. The additional operating costs are a combination of costs associated with providing those services like equipment, facilities, utilities, those sorts of things. But there's also a large amount of grant funding that we distribute to municipalities, to locals, other state agencies. So each division will work through a similar format like this to really try and summarize what's going on. With our increase, we mentioned that there's a 5% increase year over year. Overall, at the department level, $649,000 of that increase is due to increases in salary and benefit costs. That amount would be significantly higher if it weren't for the 50 unfunded positions that the commissioner mentioned. So we do have $3.7 million in salary and benefit savings from 50 unfunded positions. In FY 23, we do have a $6 million increase, and that's because of increases in salaries and wages. We've got annual increments, which will come due. We also have a 27th pay period. So I'm sure you've heard about that from other departments so far, but there is an extra pay in FY 23, which is going to move our costs up for salaries and benefits. There is a $9.3 million increase in FY 22. That's primarily due to increases in expected federal fund expenditures. So those might be funding from COVID related disaster funds from FEMA, additional federal funds that, in the past, maybe we haven't done a great job estimating. For example, we didn't used to include declared disasters within our budget requests, but through work with the fiscal committee, it was determined we want to include as many requests as we can based on good estimates that we have. So we've included those in here, and that's a large part of the increase. The total general highway and turnpike and cost of collections funding for the department has decreased year over year. So we've got an $8.3 million decrease. And as the commissioner mentioned, that's a 7.1 decline in general funds, 9.7 in turnpike, 11.5 in cost of collections, which is also highway funds. I'll talk a little bit about that distinction in a minute, just as a refresher for everyone. But we do have an increase in our other funding sources, though, of 6.5 million in FY22 and 1.7 million in FY23. And that's due in large part to what the commissioner had mentioned, where we were shifting costs to our dedicated funds, allocating those costs where they truly should have always been paid in prior years. But we were really forced to take a hard look at our allocation process because of those the weaknesses within the general and highway and turnpike funds. And we were successfully able to move some funding into those dedicated funds appropriately to reduce our draw in those areas. And that's how we're able to maintain all of our public safety services, even though we have a significant decline in general highway, turnpike, cost of collections funds. If you look at the chart up here, you'll see we've got color coding for each fund source. Many of our divisions are mixed funded, as the department is as a whole. We've tried to carry the colors forward through each division. So as an example, if we look at the 22 budget here, this is for the department as a whole, where the budget funds the department with $44.6 million in general funds, which makes up 22% of the total 203.5 million. So then highway funds, 34.3, cost of collections, 30.3. Cost of collections, as a reminder to everybody, as established in, I gotta look at my reference here, Article 6A of the Constitution, and then RSA 99A, any costs associated with the collection and administration of highway funds by the Department of Safety shall be deducted before being credited to the highway fund. So what that means is essentially the costs associated with the DMV, because the DMV collects all of their fees that they collect end up going into the highway fund as revenue. So the cost of the DMV and also the costs of the Road Toll Bureau, who collects the state gas tax, those costs are taken off before the money that they collect and hits the highway fund. The best way to think of this is actually as if cost of collections equals highway funds from a budget perspective. But we're required to appropriate and report this way, and so we continue to do so. But that's an important distinction. We do loop those in together because they both have the same impact on the highway fund, which is reducing the amount of revenues that are available. So then purple is our turnpike color, 8.6 million in FY22, which represents 4% of the department's total. The other funds are 55.3 million. That's going to be all of our other dedicated funds. That includes the 911 fund, the fire fund, watercraft safety, criminal records, and several other smaller funds. And then blue is federal, 30.4 million or 15% of the total budget. So you'll see we tried to carry these colors forward for consistency moving forward. But there's definitely, even just visually, you can see there's a reduction in our state, I call them our primary state fundings, our general highway and cost of collections and turnpike fundings. The last piece to bring your attention to is the section on the right here related to our positions. Within the governor's budget and the budget documents, there are 1,135 classified and 13 unclassified positions that are authorized. Within the budget, there are 72 classified and 1 unclassified positions that are unfunded. The commissioner mentioned that we have 50 positions that are unfunded in 22-23. Up here, you can see there's an additional 23 positions that are previously unfunded state police positions. These are sworn positions, troopers, sergeants, and the like, that were not funded for several biennium. So they're included in this total, but they're not newly unfunded. The 50 positions that we are speaking to for the rest of the presentation are newly unfunded, as in they were funded in the 2021 biennium. They were filled positions. There might be some that are vacancies as well. And those 50 are now not funded in this position, in this budget request. All right. So if we move on to our first area is the Office of the Commissioner. So the Office of the Commissioner, it consists of the Commissioner and 2 assistant commissioners. All 7 divisions report directly to the Commissioner, and the department's Public Information Officer, the Office of Highway Safety, the Legal Unit, and the Bureau of Hearings are all organized within the Office of the Commissioner. The Office of Highway Safety, they develop and implement our statewide highway safety program. And it's really designed to reduce traffic crashes and obviously reduce any resulting death or injury, and also property damage. They administer federally funded safety grant programs. They plan and they implement all the federal funded highway safety projects across the state. There's a lot of money that they award to locals for increased enforcement activities at local PDs, and also some public relations activities to encourage the public to buckle up, because we do not have a safety belt law in New Hampshire, but we do want to encourage people to wear a safety belt whenever they can. The legal unit is responsible for providing legal services to the entire department and all the divisions in all of our programs. Their duties include advising management on legal issues related to policies and procedures. They handle administrative rulemaking, operations, personnel issues, labor management issues. They're also available for assistance with contract reviews, civil liability, and right to know requests, and any other issues as needed. The Bureau of Hearings is responsible for conducting administrative hearings, criminal prosecution in select circuit courts, litigation of hearings appeals, and also hearings of the New Hampshire Motor Vehicle Industry Board. They also prosecute most of the state police DWI cases throughout the state. They do have a unit of prosecutory attorneys. As you can see here, what we'll do throughout is list where our unfunded positions are in the structure. And so in the Office of the Commissioner, there's 1 unfunded position in the Office of Highway Safety and 2 unfunded positions in the Bureau of Hearings.
Steve,
Yes.
with these positions that you're identifying as unfunded, could you tell us if these are, as you're going through the briefing, part of the 50 new ones, or if those were there before?
Sure. So
Thank you.
the only positions that are identified in the presentation are part of the 50. So the 23, the state police 23 that I mentioned at the beginning, are not included in the rest of the presentation. So it's only 50, the other 50 that we're talking about.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Sure. So the next page, we move on to the Office of the Commissioner's budget request page. The governor's recommended budget requests $20.2 million in FY22, which is a 5% increase over FY21, and a $20.4 million increase in FY23, which is a 1% increase over FY22. The $151,000 decrease in FY22 is due to reductions in salary and benefits from 3 unfunded positions. That decrease is offset by a $292,000 increase, by a $1.2 million increase in FY22 due to the combined impact of retiree health expense that got transferred out to the Division of State Police, and then increases in federal grants and debt service payments. You can see from the funding perspective here, as far as in the blue, we do have an increase in our projected federal expenditures from 8.2 to 12.4 million. That's really driving this increase year over year. In FY23, we do have a $292,000 increase. That again is going to be due to salary and benefit increases from increments, and then also the 27th pay period. Within the Office of the Commissioner, there are a few new positions that are funded within this budget. There are 2 new 100% federally funded positions within the Office of Highway Safety. It's a field representative and an informational representative too. Those are both 100% federally funded and intended to help them achieve their mission of improving highway safety and also helping to move money out of that area into the different locals as needed. And then we also have funding for a new Attorney 3 to oversee investigations in coordination with the Attorney General's office. So these would be department level investigations. And that's something that was a gap that needed to be filled, that we worked closely with the Attorney General's office on determining the best approach. And it was determined an Attorney 3 here at Safety would be the preferred option. We do have 45 authorized full-time positions that are classified and 3 unclassified within the Office of the Commissioner. And then in this area, there are 3 unfunded full-time classified positions as well. And those positions will result in some delays in scheduling and possibly some delays in grant and contract processing to local state agencies. On the next page, this is the list of funding gaps within the Office of the Commissioner. So if additional revenue becomes available at this stage in the process, we would seek to fund the existing Bureau of Hearings positions. It's an Attorney 4 and a Secretary 2. And these positions are used to schedule and conduct adjudicative hearings. If they're not filled, there will be delays in scheduling, increased caseloads for the remaining examiners. And there would be delays also in the final report issuance as caseloads just continue to increase. There would also be an increased risk of not meeting statutory deadlines for certain cases, including administrative license suspensions. We're not saying that would happen, but just the reality is with less staff, there's an increased risk, and we do our best to shift our resources to make sure that we're meeting those requirements first and foremost. And then the Office of Highway Safety position is a Program Assistant 2, and this position is used to process contract and grant documents with vendors and locals. This is distributing that federal aid, the highway safety aid across the state. We'd have to reassign those responsibilities to other people within the Office of Highway Safety. But again, we've got people who are fully tasked with other duties. It would likely result in delays and could decrease the effectiveness of the funding if it takes us an extra month or two to make a grant award. That's a month or two that the local may not be able to utilize those funds, and that could increase the risk of highway safety vehicle issues.
Steve,
Yes.
are these general funded or highway funded positions or whatever?
These are a mix. So the Bureau of Hearings is our highway funded positions. The highway safety position is partially highway funded and partially federally funded.
So it's not just a clear, what do I want to say? Because of the mix of funding,
Mm-hmm.
each of these positions would have to, like, some would have to come from highway, someone would have to come from someplace else.
Well, yes and no. So we could change the funding mix depending upon the source of funds that were available. So if general funds were available, we can always add general funds to any area because they're general funds. If there were highway funds, that's where we have less flexibility because now we have to make sure we meet the requirement to spend those funds because they are restricted. So, to your point, if there were highway funds available or turnpike funds, we would have to be careful about where we use those. But if there were general funds, we would be able to utilize all of those.
Thank you.
Steve, can I just add one point?
Sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, just for clarification, if you look, so we're looking to add an attorney. And as you can see, we're trying to get an Attorney 4, which would be actually the number 2 in the Bureau of Hearings, funded if possible, and completely separate duties and responsibilities. Why I need to add an Attorney 3 to our in-house legal counsel is the complexity of our internal affairs and to ensure we have a person managing them Many of these sometimes are personnel violations. Some could border on criminal. Some can be walled off. So you have to have essentially two cases going at once, the criminal side and the personnel side. Some of our investigations could involve other agencies. So what we found was to ensure that we're managing it and we have transparency in it, so we don't have one person making a decision. There'd be, more broader oversight. That's why, based on the duties and responsibilities they have in there now with personnel, with litigation, with contracts, with 91As, we were falling. We weren't in a position of managing to success. And with the LEAC Commission, I found that we definitely need more oversight, and we need a greater overall management of these investigations. And so that is what that position is about. And I had many conversations with the Attorney General's office throughout this. Thank you.
Commissioner. Okay, so moving on to our first division, which again, it's based off the budget numbers, but this is my favorite division because it happens to be the one that I'm the director of. Division of Administration provides internal support services to all the divisions in safety. And our mission is to provide the highest quality support services in all of the areas that we oversee. Each bureau, we're made up of 6 different bureaus, and each has a direct impact on the unique public safety mission within all of the Department of Safety. And we really view ourselves as a force multiplier, trying to minimize the administrative burden so the divisions can focus as much as possible just on mission delivery. Our vision is that we're a recognized partner and a valuable asset to all the divisions in helping them run their business. So we have 6 bureaus. The Financial Management and Planning Bureau manages all the finances for the department, including the coordination and the development of the operating and the capital budget. This is your typical accounts payable, accounts receivable, purchasing contracts, all the fiscal related items, G&C items, those types of things. The Human Resources Management Bureau provides HR functions to all employees and divisions within the department. We've got the payroll function under Human Resources. This also includes hiring under Talent Acquisition, our organizational management area, which works on reclassification of positions when necessary, when business needs change. And then also performance management for employee evaluations and discipline as needed, and risk management, which is our workers' compensation, family medical leave, all those challenging leave requests that employees have over time. The Asset and Resource Management Bureau maintains all of our fixed and mobile assets. They are also responsible for warehousing all of our supplies and inventorying all of our fixed assets. They ship items to the divisions across the state, and they also run an automotive garage where they perform repair on our fleet, primarily our state police vehicles, but all of our fleet vehicles. Just state police is the largest customer. We also have a mailroom, and the mailroom is extremely busy. They process about 1.8 million pieces of incoming mail, about 1.6 pieces of outgoing mail. A lot of that has to do with DMV notifications, license renewals, things of that nature. So you can imagine that's important that mail continues to be moving efficiently. And then lastly, we also are responsible for the plate room. So we distribute over 500,000 license plates to municipal agents and the DMV substations across the state. The Road Toll Bureau, collects the state's road toll, also known as the gas tax, and that supports the highway fund. So road toll collections each year are about 188 million. 130 million of that is unrestricted highway funds, and another 58 million of that is restricted to certain purposes over at DOT. So they're funds used to pay down debt, betterment funds, those types of things. We also have an audit function in road toll, and that function, it's not purely designed just to find additional revenues. It's really designed to encourage voluntary compliance by taxpayers. when taxpayers realize there's an audit function, they're more likely to comply with the law. And so I think we have good compliance in that area. We also have a grants management bureau, which is responsible for administering and reporting federal grants for the department, and specifically Homeland Security grants, that Homeland Security grant program, which distributes funds to both locals and state agencies. And this bureau is extremely busy. They manage subawards, oftentimes over 400 subawards at any given time to locals and state agencies. And then last but not least, our Facilities Management Bureau is responsible for the maintenance, construction, groundskeeping, and also our energy efficiency projects at 44 DOS facilities. So we have a large facilities footprint across the state. Some of those facilities are administrative services facilities, but we work closely with them, and our team will collaborate and help get projects done as needed, even in those buildings that aren't strictly DOS funded. And as you can see, we do have several unfunded positions, one of which is the Deputy Director of Administration. So moving on to the Division of Administration budget summary.
Steve,
Yes,
could you send to us the breakdown of what's funded by DAS and what's funded by DOS? So that we have an understanding of that relationship?
sure. As far as which facilities?
Right,
Yes, sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Got it. Okay, so the Division of Administration, the governor's recommended budget for 2022 is $10.5 million, which is a 32% decrease over FY21, and $10.9 million in FY23, which is a 1% increase over FY22. The $1.2 million of the decrease is due to salary and benefits from 14 unfunded positions within the division. The $3.7 million decrease, or $3.7 million of the decrease in FY22 is due to division-specific operating costs. So DOIT operating costs were changed. We changed how we allocated those within this budget. In the past, the Division of Administration, for whatever reason, we carried the brunt of the IT costs and funded them with highway funds. We instead allocated those out using PC count as a primary allocation when possible to the different areas within the department, which helped to reduce the draw on the highway fund and charge the dedicated funds appropriately for the IT services that they were receiving. So that's a big chunk of why there's a decline here. And then I'll show you Appendix A in a minute, because this will come up several times moving forward. There is a $325,000 increase in FY23, and that's due to the increase in salaries and benefits from employee increments in the 27th pay period. And then the impact of the unfunded positions, which we'll go into a little bit more detail, is really just increases it'll negatively impact our ability as a division to deliver support services to all the other divisions, and will require them to take up some more of the administrative burden, which is really something that we don't want to do. We want them focused on mission delivery. And then also some road toll positions might negatively impact the highway fund. So you can see here, we've got our 13 classified and 1 unclassified unfunded position. And then this is the listing of our funding gaps related to admin. So again, if revenue became available, we would request that these positions be funded. The Deputy Director of Administration. This is an unclassified position that was established in FY 2021. And that's to provide additional support services to all of the other divisions. That role is really critical in helping us to implement the process and reporting improvements that we'd like to implement to, again, minimize the administrative burden that the divisions currently have while keeping them engaged and involved in the budget process and contracting and all those services. There are 3 HR positions that are unfunded, and these will cause some problems because we'll have to reassign some significant duties to existing staff who are already have a full load. Specifically, the risk, we call it the risk management area. So Family Medical Leave Act, Workers' Compensation, Americans with Disabilities Act, any of those accommodation requests that employees make, those have to be processed. There's a little bit of a legal component to it. It definitely requires timeliness as well. We really need a full-time position for that, but for the time being, those roles are being completed by other people within that area, and we'd have to continue to do that moving forward if this position remained unfunded. Financial management and planning, we've got accounting technician and administrative assistant, and these positions are really critical to the timely and accurate processing of all of our vendor payments. Also working through our fiscal note development and tracking for the legislature. So that's all managed centrally within this area, and these individuals ensure that that occurs timely and accurately. And then finally, we've got our procurement activities, which fall under these areas as well. And so there'd likely be delays in procurement across the board. And again, pushing that down to the other agencies, to the other departments.
Steve, go ahead,
Go.
Representative. No, you go ahead, ma'am.
Oh, that's okay. I just, in the areas where you have several unfunded positions, would you mind providing us with a, this is my top priority, this is second, this is third?
Sure.
I mean, I realize they're all important, but more than likely, there's no way that they're all going to get funded. And so out of your 50 unfunded positions, it would be nice if we could have some sort of a priority list for, to look at. And I believe Representative Heath also has a question.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. This is just listening to the number of positions that you're eliminating. It sounds like it's really going to impact a variety of things. I mean, when I hear issues with procurement, completing fiscal notes, what about services that are necessary? I guess my first question is, number one, how much money did you lapse in the past year? And secondly, isn't there some way to really mitigate funds without impeding the work of the department? Thank you.
Sure. So we're projecting to lapse approximately $4 million in general funds this year, another $2.5 million in highway funds, another $2 million in cost of collections. So we're also lapsing just under $1 million or about $1 million in turnpike funds. So there's a significant amount of funding that we've been forced to lapse this year. And that, if you recall, that was really due to the unknown nature of the revenue sources. So we had a hiring freeze, and we've been working under those reduced numbers for some time. I want to take a minute too and just let you know that the staff at all divisions in the Department of Safety, they've done a tremendous job because we've all been impacted by this, and they've really remained positive and continue to get the job done. So I think it's important for this committee to understand what the impacts are, and we're doing this. I don't want to be, we don't want to be saying that there's a crisis mode going on, but just to be clear that these are the areas that would be impacted, and we'll have to shift resources. We still will be able to get the job done. And so that's important to understand. We're going to be able to get it done. It's going to take us longer. And if it takes us longer, it might increase the risk associated with not getting things done more timely within those different areas. So I think you'll see that we've spread these out over multiple different areas without having a large hit in one single area. And that's one of the goals that we made.
Representative Petrie, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you, and thank you for taking my question. I understand there's a significant backlog in background checks, and I guess it's over a month in some situations. Could you address that, please?
I'll take that, sir. Which background checks are you referring to?
When people purchase a firearm, I guess that runs through your department and onto the federal level.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so there's actually, that's the permits and licensing unit, which Representative Umbarger had a detailed explanation on that a few years ago and helped us with our funding. But so in the permits and licensing, sir, they do the approvals for a new purchase of a handgun. So if you went in to purchase a handgun, the FFL would communicate to the permits and licensing unit. I would say over the last 6 to 8 weeks, we have really redefined our business model down there. And now our turnaround time is, I would say, very good. They've got they're handling the calls one at a time, and the backlog there on our approvals is, I mean, they're handling many. I get a weekly dashboard within a half hour. So the other area down there where we get questioned on is out-of-state permits. So that's an area we have to monitor. Return authorization to the courts on firearms that have been taken by the court through a process, ex parte, and then the court requires us to do a check to see if the weapon can be turned back. And then the backlog on those that were delayed. So if a customer goes to an FFL shop to purchase a weapon, we can either tell him or her that it is approved, and on approval, we're getting many of those done within 30 minutes. Denied, which can be rather quick if there's a clear disqualifying offense, or delayed. And the delay means there is something that has come up on the criminal history that is not conclusive, and it requires us to do some research. So we had been behind in the delays, the returns to the court, but we've turned many of those around greatly within the last 4 weeks. And I can get you more information offline, but I would say they're doing significantly better today than we were in the last 2 months. But we have a team. We've added, we've got a state police major that's overseeing it with the colonel. So yes, we did have significant backlogs, but we've reduced many of those.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And if I could add to that, Representative Petrie, we actually have, later in the presentation, you'll see we've added 3 positions to that area in this budget, which will further help us to address those concerns.
Representative Lynn, you have a question?
Excuse me, it's more of a comment than a question. I have to say, Representative Petrie, just for your information, one of my best friends is an FFL that lives in Fremont, and I see him, at least twice a week. And just recently, we had a conversation in which he was telling me that although there had been some delay in getting the FFL, getting the checks done, that had improved significantly in the last couple of months or so. So he was very pleased with that.
Thank you.
Great. So the 4 existing Asset and Resource Management Bureau positions, these are really key roles in that area to help continue providing supplies to the other divisions. So the Automotive Shop Manager 2, which oversees the garage, the Forms Design and Control Clerk to make sure that all of our forms are up to date and they're accurate, they're tied back to our administrative rules. Stock Clerk and Mail Clerk, again, keep the product moving, keep those things moving. Those are critical. In the Road Toll Bureau, we have 3 Road Toll Auditor 2s and a Counter Clerk that are unfunded. And as I mentioned, the audit function is important. We do collect over 188 million in revenues in that area, and the audit function does help to encourage voluntary compliance with taxpayers. It's unlikely that we'd be able to complete the same number of audits as we currently do now. There are some requirements for audits within certain programs that we have to meet a criteria on. We would focus our resources on meeting those criteria, so then some other audits would go undone. And then the facility maintenance costs, we've historically underfunded our facility maintenance costs for the Department of Safety. Last budget was the first time we were able to add additional funding, but then COVID hit and we couldn't move forward with any of the projects, or very few of the projects that we had intended. And then the spending freeze made that even worse. So there is additional funding that if money was available, that we would request to help us maintain our facilities across the state.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's just a brief question. Would it be possible for you to do a breakdown of general funded positions, federal funded positions by bureaus, I guess, or divisions that you have for us in totals, and indicate where you're deleting those, where the numbers are being reduced, so that we just kind of have kind of like a chart? That would be very good. Thank you.
Okay, so total positions by division, what's funded, what's unfunded,
Source of funding for them.
and the funding source.
Yep.
Okay, we can do
Thank
that.
you.
Yep.
And split funded, Steve, correct?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, the vast majority are going to be split funded, so we'll
Okay, yeah,
show
thank
that
you.
impact.
All right.
Yeah. and so that split will include general, other, and highway, and turnpike?
And turnpike, and we'll show cost of collections wherever it's appropriate also.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on to the
Sorry, we're giving you so many things to do, Steve, but
hey, I love it. I enjoy doing this stuff. So go ahead and throw it at me.
okay.
Thank you. The Division of Motor Vehicles. The mission is to enhance public safety on the roadways in New Hampshire by ensuring that really everyone's properly credentialed, whether that's drivers, vehicles, service providers, and also making sure that we've got exceptional and efficient customer service in the areas of licensing motor vehicles and motor vehicle related matters. And the division is broken up into 5 bureaus and then also an administration unit. The Bureau of Driver Licensing is responsible for issuing driver licenses, but also non-driver IDs. The driver licenses, they issue operator licenses, commercial driver licenses, real IDs. And part of that process of issuance might include a vision test or a knowledge test or a road test for people getting their license for the first time. That's all handled by this bureau. They have automated touchscreen testing system that is implemented. And the licensing bureau also provides training for new and experienced motorcycle riders through a motorcycle rider training program. Each year they produce over 350,000 licenses. They perform about 27,000 skills and road tests. So that's a big area for the DMV. The Bureau of Financial Responsibility. This is the area that maintains the driving records, individual driving history, the status of their license, vehicle registration privileges. It's really the repository for data gathered from all the law enforcement agencies and circuit courts and district courts, and also out-of-state motor vehicle agencies. And so the Bureau receives and processes records that come in from these different sources. They update individuals' driving records, and that would include changes to document convictions or suspensions and revocations, and also restoration dates and if there were any crashes or accidents that they were involved in. This is also the area that collects the plea by mail tickets. So when a violation is issued, the individual has the option to plea by mail with a payment to the DMV. Those get processed here. If they'd like to contest their ticket, that's when the ticket then moves to the court system instead. The Bureau of Operations is responsible for overseeing all the daily customer interactions, whether that's in person or over the phone or through email. They operate 13 substations as well as the Concord DMV location. And they've really focused on customer service and trying to cross-train their staff so that they can conduct any type of motor vehicle transaction that the customer needs at any given time. And so they've been very successful in doing that. Just as an idea, in typical pre-COVID times, there were over 20,000 calls each month. That number's definitely increased because we're now moving into an appointment-based system. But that's another area that I just want to take a brief minute to let the committee know. So Director Bilecki, Elizabeth Bilecki is the Director of Motor Vehicles. She's really done a great job in keeping the DMV open and functioning during COVID. So a lot of other states, they decided to shut down DMV functions for a period of time. We didn't in New Hampshire. So the DMV was closed for 2 days while they shifted to an appointment-based system as opposed to just walk-ins. And we've invested in technology. The governor's office helped us with some gopher funding to do so and made some changes to the DMV process. So now DMV remained open, albeit there were delays. I'm not going to say there weren't delays. We had less staff. We couldn't schedule as many appointments, but at least you knew when you were coming into the DMV. You knew you had a block of time. You could schedule your day accordingly. And I think that from what we hear, the public's really pleased with the new appointment-based process. So DMV fundamentally changed how they did business during COVID, and I think that they have some benefits that came from that as well. Bureau of Registrations. So they oversee registrations of vehicles. It's really vehicles, trailers, or boats. Essentially anything except for OHRVs, off-highway recreational vehicles. And they don't deal with the snowmobiles either. But the purpose is to protect the public really in this function. So if there's a collision or a theft or a violation of law, they can identify the vehicle. And that's an important part of operating the vehicle safely in the state. We have a municipal agent automation project. That's our MAP system, MAAP. And this connects about 230 municipal agents to the DMV. And so that's how the municipal agents are able to issue plates and process DMV transactions at the local level for their residents. They process about 1.5 million registrations each year. The Bureau of Title and Anti-Theft, that area processes all new and duplicate titles, applications for motor vehicles and trailers. They enter the information for all vehicles sold through state authorized dealerships, refinanced vehicles and salvaged vehicles, and they're always reviewing those title applications for fraud as well. That's something we want to make sure that we stay on top of. And this is an important function because the New Hampshire automobile dealers really depend on timely processing of these titles, so they can offer trade-in vehicles for sale soon after purchase. We issue about 333,000 titles each year. And then there's an administration section that manages DMV contracts, procurements, and audit functions for the division. And you can see where the unfunded positions are located within DMV. So here we have our budget request. Governor's recommended budget for the DMV for FY22 is a total of $28.1 million, which is a 7.6% decrease from 21. And it's a $29.1 million request in 23, which is a 3.3% increase over 22. $963,000 of the 22 decrease are due to decreases in salaries and benefits from 16 unfunded full-time positions, and also a $150,000 decrease in part-time funding that was made, again, to meet the revenues that were available. 1.3 million of the FY22 decrease is due to a decrease in operating costs, including DOIT expenses, debt service, and facility maintenance costs. In FY23, $832,000 of the increase is due to increases in salaries and benefits from increments and then that 27th pay period. Again, similar to admin, we have significant reductions in full-time and part-time staffing levels. All services will still be produced and provided, but there will likely be delays in certain areas. And DMV is going to continue to work on moving things online and processing transactions efficiently and fully leverage technology so that they can continue to improve customer service even without these staffing resources that we've had in the past.
Steve, can I add just one thing? Before we leave DMV, I just want to say, I want to just emphasize a little, when COVID struck on or about March 3rd, March 10th, we opened the AOC. Between then and currently, Director Balicki has continued to finish projects to get services online. Everything that can be done online, she's migrating that way. She's done a tremendous job. We had a comparison to our DMV to the other New England states, and I would be proud to say that I think we are, leading them all with not only the emphasis on customer service and lines, but there's a tremendous impact on public safety there, as Steve said, with the financial responsibility, our interlock program, ensuring things travel to hearings as they should be. But I just think it's important to note that not only have we stayed open, and she's kind of managed and been very, very nimble through COVID, they've finished projects. And I think, the future looks very bright. So anything we can get done online, and then that allows us to shift people that we're required to do it. But the Qmatic scheduling system has really been a game changer for the DMV now. Folks are not waiting in line. And so I think thank you for the continued support of the DMV. And I think we're being very, very responsible with these dollars and ensuring that the public benefits not only on customer service, but on the safety piece. Thank you.
Yes, and I would like to thank Director Balecki in particular for making sure that all the legislators could get their plates as they needed them. So
All right.
yeah, that was very nice. Representative Petrie, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Actually, I got a comment. You did an excellent job in delivering the PPE. I know the beginning when we were escorted by state troopers, that was interesting. And then the model changed to bring in the PPE to DMVs. Has that incurred an additional cost to the department, or are you just doing stride?
I can address that, Commissioner. So obviously, whenever there's staffing involved, there's the salary and benefits that are attached to them, but there's no additional costs necessarily besides the time, the cost it is to take someone to manage that program. All of those PPE and the distribution systems, all of that's getting reimbursed with federal monies. And so anything that we have been spending will get recouped over time.
Thank you.
Representative Murray, you have a question?
Yes, thank you again. You've done a fabulous job, and this move to online, is that a permanent move? Will you continue to do all the stuff that you're doing now online post-COVID? I'm looking, is there a silver lining here that some things may actually pertain going forward to some advantage to us?
Yeah, I'll start and Steve can clean up. Yeah, we're not going backwards. So everything that we've migrated online is going to stay online. And I think what would be helpful is maybe the director can forward Representative Umbarger. We've got a nice chart of what we've done and what the next projects are in the queue. So we've got a few more that she's trying to get done. But yeah, oh no, these will be permanent. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I give her credit, the governor office on the capital investments, but I think that, everybody's benefited from the dollars. And again, it's a credit to the director. She's done a nice job getting these projects completed.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, Commissioner, if she could send that.
Okay, will do, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
What
Steve,
Director Balecki, and I'll include that with our other requests for you.
okay. You're back on, Steve.
Okay. Thank you. So now we look at the 16 unfunded positions in DMV. And again, you're going to see a theme here where there's going to be delays to service. So the first group, there's 2 positions in driver licensing. These positions are required to schedule driver license examinations and conduct them. And they're needed to offer road tests in all locations to prevent customers from having to travel too far for those critical services. So without a full complement of driver licensing examiners, we can't offer driver license exams at every DMV substation across the state. In the Registration Bureau, there are 5 full-time unfunded positions, and those are required to prevent delays in the assistance that is provided to town clerks while they're processing those MAP transactions, those registrations, boat renewals, dealer inspection station applications, also vanity plates and walking disability placards. So those are all the general registration functions that occur, and these positions would negatively impact all of those areas. In the Title Bureau, there's 2 positions, an examiner and a supervisor, 3, and those are required to prevent delays in processing the title documents. And as I mentioned before, this is an area that the New Hampshire automobile dealers are really focused on, making sure we continue timely processing. In financial responsibility, this is the area where your driving history record is updated. And so any violations or accidents need to be timely processed so that your record is up to date. And many of these transactions result in suspensions and revocation of privileges. And so we'd want to make sure that those are updated and reversed in a timely manner as well. In operations, there's 4 positions there, and these are those direct service positions at all the substations. They conduct the counter transactions where, even though we're moving more and more online, we still have a need for in-person transactions. And so the less people we have, the less scheduled times we can fill. And then finally, part-time employees in operations. So the DMV relies very heavily on part-time employees. That's how they shift and cover when full-time folks are unavailable due to annual leave or illness. And so part-timers really help to fill a need for us. And also when there's surge support needed. So if there's an increase in volume, we rely on our part-timers and additional funding. We did reduce the part-time budget. We would look to return that to the levels that are required if funding was available. There's also a new position request that was important that I wanted to mention. That's the Program Assisted 2. And that's an area in the Ignition Interlock program at DMV. And so this person would be responsible for the oversight of those violations, hearings, and management of that program for any drivers who were convicted of alcohol-related convictions and moved into that program. And then again, facility maintenance costs, because of our different funding sources, because cost of collections supports DMV, we budget for facility maintenance costs for DMV locations within the DMV. So much like in admin, where we have facility maintenance for the other DOS facilities, here's an additional $20,000 would be requested for the DMV facilities. Okay, moving on. The next division is
Yeah, just a second. A second. So the cost of collections is pretty much funded by the highway and turnpike. Is that correct?
just the highway.
Just the highway. Okay. So cost of collections is funded by the highway. And so any changes in this area would impact the highway fund. Is that correct?
Any changes would impact the highway fund, yes.
Okay.
But let me give you an example of some of the things that some of the funding decisions or ability that we have. If we typically treat cost of collections and highway funds as interchangeable. So if additional general funds become available, those general funds could replace highway funds within the Division of State Police or highway funds within the commissioner's office, which would reduce the highway fund draw and allow us to increase the cost of collections by the same amount. So we have some flexibility if general funds become available to shift our funding sources around.
Okay, thank you.
So next is our largest division, the Division of State Police. The Division of State Police is our statewide law enforcement agency, and they enforce state criminal, motor vehicle, and other public safety laws across the state. They have concurrent jurisdiction in towns with a population level under 3,000 and primary jurisdiction on all interstate highways. And they operate 7 troop stations, a Marine Patrol facility, an aircraft hangar. And they also operate the State Forensic Lab, Criminal Records Unit, Permits and Licensing Unit. As you can see, lots of different pieces here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in each one, but I want to spend a little bit of time describing what some of these key functions are. So under the Operations Bureau, they're the primary motor vehicle enforcement and criminal deterrence patrol statewide. And as I mentioned, for communities that don't have their own police force, whether it's because of cost concerns or just funding issues or size, the troopers provide the whole range of law enforcement services in those areas, conducting controls, taking calls for service, covering accidents, investigating criminal activity. So the state police are split up into several troop stations, 6 troop stations across the state. That's Troop A in Epping, which covers Rockingham and Stratford counties. That's covering Interstate 95, the Spalding Turnpike and Route 101, as well as Route 125. Troop B in Bedford, they cover Hillsborough County and portion of Rockingham County that's attached to Interstate 93. Troop C in Keene, they cover Sullivan and Cheshire counties. Troop D in Concord covers Merrimack County, and then also covers 93 from Hooksett to Ashland. And also they're responsible for all the coverage on 89. Troop E is responsible for Belknap and Carroll counties. And then Troop F is responsible for Coos and Grafton counties. And Troop F is actually the largest geographic area of any of the primary troop stations. That is with the exception of Troop G, which Troop G has a statewide presence. They are the commercial motor vehicle enforcement part of state police. So they implement state laws and federal regulations for transporting hazardous materials and persons and goods and commercial vehicles while those vehicles are on the road. And they also handle the overweight vehicle limits on roads and bridges. And then finally, the civilian group is under Troop G, the automotive equipment inspectors. And they enforce laws and rules related to auto dealerships and automotive inspection stations throughout the state. The Marine Patrol is another section. They're charged by statute with enforcing boating laws and rules. And they also provide training for the boating public. And they also install navigational aids, so buoys, those types of things. They patrol approximately 975 public bodies of water. The jurisdiction includes any public body of water that's larger than 10 acres in size. And they also patrol the Atlantic Ocean, Hampton Harbor, the Great Bay, and also its estuary. The Mobile Enforcement Team is a specialized unit whose mission is to detect and enforce crimes and hazards on the roadways in communities throughout New Hampshire. And they work closely with local agencies in conjunction with drug enforcement units to combat illegal narcotic distributions in their communities. We also have a special services group, which is really special services are additional specialties that troopers have in addition to their day-to-day requirements. And so these are specially trained personnel, and they include services such as our K9 unit, collision analysis and reconstruction unit for automobile accidents. There's drug recognition experts, explosive disposal unit, a special events response team, and then also special weapons and tactics team, a SWAT team. That's all within the Operations Bureau. Then we also have the investigative services side of the house, and major crime unit is one of the areas that many of you are probably familiar with. So the major crime unit investigates all homicides throughout the state, and they also assist in investigations pertaining to any other manners of death, officer involved shootings, public integrity, escapes from prison, other violent felony level offenses. So they'll provide support as needed there. The narcotics investigations unit investigates all drug and vice related crimes. They have a staff of undercover personnel and specialized equipment, and that includes controlled buys of illegal drugs, including heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamines. And then the special investigations unit, they are highly specialized area, really focused on cyber crimes, for the most part, computer and cyber threats, and other specialized crimes, including financial, organized crime, human trafficking. So very specific and detailed stuff that they deal with. Then the other side of the investigative criminal justice information area is the Justice Information Bureau. So this is the area that contains the permits and licensing unit, criminal records, the communications unit. Communications is a centralized dispatch center. We've got staffing in 2 different locations, one of which is in the IPOC, the Incident Planning and Operations Center in Concord. We also have a backup location in True Beth, which is located in Twin Mountains. And these staff, they dispatch for all of state police, all troops. They dispatch for liquor enforcement, the state fire marshal, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and also Fish and Game. And that's the Fish and Game piece is a new change that's occurred within this budget as well, as far as dispatching full-time for Fish and Game. We've always dispatched part-time, but now that's going to be a full-time dispatching function. The J1 area, that's the One Network Environment for Justice. It's a system that allows us to capture criminal justice information at the source and then transfer that to interested parties. So it's transferring information from police to DMV to courts, and back and forth and every which way. The goal is to reduce errors and reduce duplicate data entry and really just improve the overall function of the criminal justice system in the state. And there's certain functions that have been moving to an online component over time, like e-tickets, e-complaints, e-citations, and also live scan fingerprint taking electronically through the live scan machines. The criminal records unit falls under this area. They maintain the criminal history record information, the CHRI, which is the repository. They also manage the AFIS system, the automated fingerprint identification system, and UCR, the Uniform Crime Reporting System. Permits and licensing, which they operate the gun line, as we mentioned, the commissioner mentioned earlier, where federal firearm licensed dealers, FFLs, request background checks for New Hampshire residents purchasing handguns commercially. They also do backgrounds on individuals applying for non-resident concealed pistol licenses. They also license armed and unarmed PIs, private investigators, security guards, bail bondsmen, and also issue certificates for the use of explosive. So there's a lot going on in the Division of State Police. There's definitely a sworn aspect with law enforcement activities. There's also the civilian aspect with a lot of justice information pieces, but it all falls under state police's purview.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
Well, yes, I do. Thank you. That was unbelievable, your presentation. Excellent. That division is certainly clearly very significant. Now, as a result of the commission, the LIAC commission, all of those individuals are going to require a degree of training based on the recommendations that came out of the committee. Are you going to incur additional costs as a result of that?
Yes, yeah, we will. In fact, I'll jump ahead based on that question. We do have increased training costs. These are estimates, of course, because we don't know what the true cost will be, but we included this within the budget, 131,000 each year to meet those additional requirements. Yeah.
Representative Heath? Yeah, I just wanted to add too, the colonel and his staff do a monthly update on LEACT. As you know, I believe it was 49 recommendations. The governor approved all of them. And so we're tracking, what we've done, what are our deadlines. There are many in there for training, community engagement, integrating, professionals, mental wellness with our tactical teams, as well, obviously, as our digital evidence collection project, which includes the body cameras and the cruiser cameras. But it's a global digital collection of.
Good, great. Thank you very much.
Representative Lynn, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. My question was directed at, I think I saw in your last slide before the current one, that there are 9 vacancies in the forensic lab, and I'm just, how many people in total are in the forensic lab? That seems like it's a pretty big percentage.
Yeah, I can give you a minute. I can tell you how many are in total. That it is a lot. I mean, that's not 9 vacancies is nothing to that's a lot. And what we would again, the challenge ends up being identifying those areas within the lab that have a deadline, that there's a statutory deadline, there's a case pending, there's something that needs to happen within a period of time, prioritizing those activities with the understanding that there will be delays in other lab services that are provided. Let me see if I can quickly give you the position count.
I'll jump in, Steve. Well, Steve's looking for a judge. So as you know, the lab, we've got two major components, the crim side on the left, the toxicology side on the right, and they also do digital evidence. They've had a couple vacancies on the cyber, the computer crime area, but I know the colonel looks very closely at the backlogs, whether it's in fingerprints or, but I know with the marijuana decrease of submissions to the lab, it's allowed them to concentrate more on the, the narcotics of fentanyl and the methamphetamine. And so the thing with the lab that we have to pay attention to is the training time to get somebody in there, whether they're on the fingerprint side of the house, to get them to the point, or ballistics, the firearms comes to mind, because it takes a couple years really to get trained up. But I know that number seems high, but we're working very close to maintain, we're meeting all the deadlines for court. And that's, but again, you're right, it is there is a significant amount of vacancies there. Steve, do you have the total number?
Yeah, so there's 31 total positions in the forensic lab. There's 10 positions in the toxicology lab. And then I'm looking for the urine CODIS lab as well. So we're at 41.
So maybe what we can do, Steve, offline, we'll get the judge where those positions are in the lab. Which ones are on crim, which ones are on tox.
Yeah, we can do it. I just don't want to waste any more time looking for it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And really, I think you've really answered my question. I was really concerned about, what if it was having a significant impact on providing, evidence that was needed in court or that kind of thing. And it sounds like you've been able to handle it, but
well,
obviously things would be better if you had the at least some of those positions filled. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, we're clearly not ready to take a victory lap, because as you know, this past year has been tough to measure against with COVID as to what's being submitted, what isn't. So,
Sure.
But we work very closely with them. The toxicology side, I had a meeting this morning on highway safety. It's important for highway safety to get the tox results for the fatals. So, so we look at I'll just say this, we look at the metrics, the KPIs in every division. What do you need to be doing, and are you meeting your demands? So I will look at that, and I will have Steve get a small memo back to Representative Umberger on the lab.
I do
Thank
have,
thank you very much.
I do have a question. I thought 3 years ago that we added people to the toxicology side because of all the problems with fentanyl and meth and heroin. And now I see that crystal meth is raising its ugly head here in New Hampshire. So I hope we're not decreasing the number of people in that lab.
Point well taken.
We have,
Just, Steve, you don't need to give it to me now. Just,
okay. Yep,
just, we're gonna get back together here in
yep.
next
Yeah,
week.
we'll get you the breakdown so you can see, but the vast majority of those are not in the toxicology lab. It's either 1 or 2 positions. I believe it's 1, but we'll get the
Yeah.
actuals.
We'll talk about it next time.
Very good.
Thank you.
So the state police budget request, the governor's budget for FY22, recommended budget is $96.5 million, which is a 12.9% increase over 21, and $99.8 million in FY23, which is a 3.5% increase over FY22. The significant changes here have to do with a $3.4 million increase in 22 and a $3.3 million increase in 23 due to salary and benefit increases from expected employee increments, and then that 27th pay period in FY23. This was partially offset by a $1.3 million decrease in FY22 and a $1.4 million decrease in 23 from savings associated with those 15 unfunded civilian positions. As I mentioned before, there are 23 unfunded troopers. Those are reflected in the number 38 here under the unfunded classified position. But we're only really speaking to the 15 unfunded positions throughout the presentation and as far as requesting funding to refund those 15 only. The $4.3 million increase in FY22, it's due in large part on the operating side to DOIT costs that I mentioned in the admin division used to be there, were reallocated out to the appropriate areas based on which divisions use the DOIT services. So that really increased the Division of State Police's operating budget in FY22 and 23. And then we also have a $1.6 million increase due to increased operating costs because the cost of doing business is continuing to increase. Vehicle costs have increased for replacement cruisers. Also the costs that we started to speak to about the additional training related to the Lee Act. Those things are driving just an overall increased cost of law enforcement in the state. We also replaced $1.9 million in general funds with 911 funds for these communications function. And that's due to the weaknesses in general fund, highway fund, and turnpike fund revenues. So we were able to eliminate that draw on the general fund. So the Lee Act expenses, this slide shows the new funding that's included within the budget. So this funding includes funding for body and cruiser cameras for New Hampshire State Police. It's about $1 million a year. Well, that's what's included. We're not quite sure what the true cost will be yet. There is an RFP that's out on the street, and we may need to request additional funds based on where that comes. But our estimate is it's going to be around the $1 million mark. That does include 3 positions as well to manage the program. Because what's important to understand with body and cruiser cameras is that this is a digital evidence program. We're going to be creating new digital evidence streams. We have to treat them like evidence. We have to record them. We have to index them. We have to be able to redact information that's not applicable when people request this information. So just putting a camera on everybody isn't really the right approach. We need to make sure we have the infrastructure behind it to support the program.
Steve, just to add to that too, this is to all our digital evidence. Every picture we have from fatal car crashes, from crime scenes, to a trooper making a car stop and taking a picture of a contraband in a glove box. And how do we get it to headquarters? How do we store it? How do we maintain it? How do we disseminate it? How do we deal with 91As? How do we have synergy with prosecution, with defense attorneys? And again, there's some unknowns that we won't know until the RFP comes back, but we want to make sure we do it right. We're a little unique in our RFP because take, for example, the Manchester Police Department. Their cars come in and out of one central location where they have their data downloaded. They can do a hot swap. We have troopers working in remote areas where they may not come to one central point. They may, maybe, so we were looking at different options. So now we're looking at somewhat of a, an RFP on wireless options. So it's the downloading and storage, which is the real driver to this. And I'm lucky to have AC Rick Bailey, who's helping manage this project. So Rick is very, very strong in IT, and he's working very closely with Dennis Goulet on this.
Will you be able to get us information on storage? I remember back in the day when I was on criminal, one of the barriers to these sorts of programs had to do with not so much the cost of the equipment, but the cost of the storage. In the years since, has storage become less expensive, and will we be able to get some estimates around storage of what you will need in order to do this going forward?
So that is part of the proposal. So we'll know that when the RFP comes back. So yes, but to your point.
Representative Bucco, you have a question?
Yes, yes, I do. Thank you. Commissioner, I thought in the last budget cycle, we approved dash cams for all the cruisers. Has that been carried out, or what's the status of that program?
No, so what happened was we had a project in place that was looking just at in-cruiser cameras, but now we've added in-cruiser and the body cameras. So we will have the best system in place, I think. So we're going to have, full 360 coverage. So
this is in addition to what was
Correct.
previously approved.
Yes, sir.
The dash cams.
That's correct. But I just want to be clear with everyone, they are not in now. So we are waiting for, the proposal back, and we've got a timeline as to when we hope to get them implemented, into governor and council on this.
Oh, okay. That was my question. I didn't know what the status of the program was. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Okay.
no more questions.
So the other Lee Act, we talked about increased training costs. The other cost is related to medical and psychological support, contracts with professionals to support the SWAT team. So those are very stressful situations, and one of the recommendations was that we have those resources available to those teams when they're out in the field. So there's the sum of our Lee Act components. Permits and licensing unit, as I mentioned earlier, we're funding.
Excuse me, just a moment.
Yep.
I know that police standards and training are going to be doing this type of training. Are you working with them to make sure that it's included in their training program that they're going to be setting up over the next couple of years?
That's a great question, Representative Umbaga. And yes, Director Skipper was on the LEAC Commission, and we have had lengthy conversations about, once we develop these modules, whether they're on unconscious bias or use of force or, de-escalation, we're working together so that we can share and leverage them and, so to use them across the board. And, a lot of this training has to get done at the local level. Everybody does not go to police stands of training to get it. So to your point, we're trying to work together to get the most bang for our buck here on with these modules.
Okay, thank you.
So the permits and licensing positions, we already spoke to those. Marine Patrol new positions. We do have 2 new Marine Patrol Officer 2 positions. Those are both 100% federally funded from the Coast Guard grant. And those are to meet demands for services out on the seacoast, patrols out in Hampton Beach, and also cargo escorts that are required to be done, bringing cargo in required by Homeland Security. And then last, this isn't really, there's no funding necessarily associated with this, but there is unification of state dispatch services. So this budget formally unifies the dispatching operations between Fish and Game and state police. I think I had mentioned earlier, it was a, we were dispatching on a part-time basis. Now this will be on a full-time basis. And what's key to understand here is that this is the emergency dispatch function only. So Fish and Game operate what they call their law line, which the public can call up and ask, what do I do about a certain wildlife issue? If you know, if I have what do I do with the bear that's in my backyard? Those calls will still go to Fish and Game. Those won't be routed through dispatch. The dispatch will be for the emergency functions, getting the officers out to respond to emergency events out in the community.
I just wanted to add too, Representative, if you look at those Marine Patrol, 2 full-time positions, I think what's important to add is they have struggled for years. I say struggle, it's a challenge to recruit the part-timers. And the Colonel actually did an analysis of how much you can get out of 2 full-time working 12 months a year, as opposed to a part-time Marine Patrol officer. So they really did the metrics and numbers on it, and it's incredible how much more you can get. So I think it's a long-term benefit. And I know we have the funding for approximately 50 part-timers, and we struggle every year to maybe hit the 34, Steve, maybe 35 part-time. So I think this is, I think it's very wise looking at this. Thank you.
So then moving on, if more funding becomes available to the committee, these are the areas in state police we would seek additional funding for. So obviously we've already spoken about this, but the first is funding within the lab for the 9 positions in forensics, CODIS, and the tox lab. As we mentioned, these are really required to meet demands for service. And if we don't have these positions, we'll be forced to really rely on existing staff and overtime to meet any court deadlines, and it will result in delays in some other services. And then we also have 6 existing civilian positions. These positions are required for administrative support to the troopers, and also direct delivery of public safety services. And the work for this, all this work would have to be reassigned. In many cases, it would get reassigned to troopers. And again, we don't like to shift administrative duties to a mission, public safety service mission delivery person. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We also have the replacement vehicle plan. So we would be seeking an additional 1.5 million in 22, 1.6 and 23 to fund another 28 cruisers. Our cruiser plan requires us to have about 410 vehicles for 355 troopers. And that's because a trooper without a vehicle can't perform their duty. I mean, that's a key piece of equipment. Without the right number of spare vehicles, when a trooper has to bring their car in for service, they can no longer patrol. And those spare vehicles have to be available across the state because we have the statewide footprint. So it's not going to help us to have a spare vehicle up at Twin Mountain if it's needed down in Keene. And so that's the number of vehicles that we're looking for. Each year, each budget cycle, we're unable to purchase the amount that we need to really meet that threshold. And most recently, we've had our own orders reduced because of shortages that were because of the pandemic. There were shortages in supplies and materials, and so our orders have been reduced by 6 vehicles here to 3 vehicles there, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you filter that in over time with a replacement plan, that has a significant burden to us. So we do have replacement vehicles budgeted. These would be additional vehicles to help us meet our replacement plan goals. And then Detective Bureau overtime. This is an area that we've always struggled with. It's to meet demands for services, investigative services, major crime investigations. The work has to be done, and it has to be done as soon as possible after the event. There's very little control that we have. It's not like a typical administrative function where you have more control over overtime. there's less control in these cases. And so an additional $150,000 in each year would put us at a spot where we'd feel more comfortable. If not, we have to rely on vacancies and potentially transfers to fund any overage and overtime that we might have to meet demands for service.
Representative Petrie, you have a question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. All-wheel drive vehicles, is that what you're replacing the vehicles with, or as many as you can?
Yes, the new cruiser build that we utilize, the Chargers are all-wheel drives now.
And why is that, if I may?
Well, the state police are respond to the motor vehicle crashes on snowy days, kind of like, I don't know if it's doing where you guys are, but it's snowing in Concord now. And so having the all-wheel drive is really critical if they're the first responders to any motor vehicle accidents on the snowy roadways.
Very good, thank you.
Representative Heath,
Representative, we also purchased Tahoes for the troopers in the North Country. And in one trip to Colebrook, I was surprised to learn that it was the mud that troopers couldn't even get their car, their driveway. They were leaving them at, I believe, Colebrook PD. So, but we didn't have the funds to get everybody one. So we, the all-wheel drive, that's what we're migrating to. And for the troopers up in the North Country, when we can, we're giving them a four-wheel drive Tahoe.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
I do. Actually, it's a request. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it possible to get this presentation? I know we have it digitally, but is it possible to get a hard copy? I find this format very useful in terms of when we're going to be working on the budget to see what we could include in the budget. If there's any way possible that it could be mailed to us, or if we could, I wouldn't even mind picking it up in Concord, if it's possible.
Mickey, can you take care of that for us?
Yeah, so the Department of Transportation budget book that they referred to this morning, I should be getting hard copies of that. So I can put in the Department of Safety presentation and mail that out to you later
Oh,
this week.
perfect. Thank you so much. It's just hard to have everything digitally because we have to have all these different computers open to see the information that we need. It's just nice to have a hard copy.
I understand.
So Vicky, we'll get you copies so that you can include it in the mailing.
I can produce, Steve. It's okay. You don't have to worry about that. I can run copies at the office and mail them out. I appreciate that, though.
Okay, very good. Make sure they're in color.
There you go. We'll charge the color copies up to you.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, so moving on, we've only got maybe 4 divisions left, so we're about halfway there. The Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is responsible for coordinating the state's response to all major human-caused or natural disasters, and they really form the core of our emergency response organization in the state. So they operate the Emergency Operations Center whenever it needs to be activated during major disaster events. And this division, led by Director Jen Harper, has been really instrumental in our COVID-19 response function across the state. So the role of HSEM, if you think about it, really is coordination. They bring the right people to the table to make sure that we can respond to disasters across the state. And since this has started, they've been an integral part of that response. It's really been incredible to see and be part of. So they're broken into really 4 sections. The operations sections monitors the day-to-day activities, incidents, and events that are happening in New Hampshire that could require some sort of a response. So they'll be monitoring weather to see if it rises to a degree that requires some sort of action on the state's behalf. They operate the State Emergency Operations Center when it is operational, which serves as the command and control center for the state during emergency and issues. And then they support interagency coordination and also statewide executive decision-making authorities in response to disasters and events. The field services section is responsible for outreach to local communities and state agencies, and they provide technical and organizational assistance for preparing to and responding to hazards, for mitigating natural or human-caused disasters and emergencies. And the field representatives within this section, they also act as liaisons with local communities when the EOC is activated. The planning and grant section, they carry out the critical administrative and management functions related to the federal grants that are administered by HSEM. These include hazard mitigation grants and assistance to local emergency efforts and disaster aid, the public assistant grants as well. This section develops the annual update for the state emergency operations plan, the recovery annex, the state hazard mitigation plan, and then also the stakeholder preparedness reviews. And then also we have the administrative section, which includes the office of the director and the business and finance staff and community outreach office. And so they help to provide overarching leadership to the rest of the areas from an administrative perspective.
Representative Petrie, did you have a question?
No, Madam Chair, that was a mistake.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
The governor's recommended budget for FY22 is $17.1 million, which is a 63.9% increase over 21, and $17.3 million in FY23, which is a 1.1% increase over FY22. That increase is due to increased disaster money, estimated disaster money and support for ongoing state and local disasters, including COVID-19. So in the past, we really haven't done a good job of estimating our disaster grants and budgeting for them. We've always relied on going through the fiscal committee process whenever a disaster occurred because, well, for a while they were few and far between. Recently, they've been coming fast and furious. And so we decided that it's best if we adapt, if we estimate some funding moving forward for disasters, which would help to ensure that we get the money out the door faster without going through the fiscal committee process outside of the budget development process. And so that's what this represents, are those increased estimates. Most of these are dealing with COVID because we are expecting those expenditures to continue into the future years. And then who knows if there's another disaster that we'll be dealing with there. This in HSEM, there are two existing full-time positions within the operations section that are unfunded. Both of these positions provide support to the EOC efforts and also the responses to locals for aid, including the radiological emergency response activities that are associated with Seabrook Station. We really need these positions to prevent reductions in training and exercise opportunities for staff, for state agencies and local communities. So again, no programs would be impacted or cut, but there would be reductions in our ability to provide those types of training services to the locals without these two positions.
Representative Murray, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. COVID won't last forever, but there'll be other emergencies. Do you have a sense of how much of this 12 million from the federal will continue, beyond into the next biennium? Or is this money just for the next 2 years? Any sense about, any idea?
No, the real answer is no. It's really an estimate based off of what we're seeing as far as spending and reimbursement requests. But so I'll give you an example. If best case scenario, we head into 22, COVID expenditures start going away, we've got this thing covered. Maybe in 23, there's one big snowstorm that requires disaster assistance. Maybe we don't need the 12.2 and it's only 6 million. I mean, at that point, the federal money needs to come into the state anyway for us to spend it. But if worst case scenario, there's new variants, COVID ends up being something we live with for another year or so in a different capacity, we likely would need that full 12 million. And there's a very good chance also that we need 20 million, but we won't know that until other new disasters hit. So we tried to create an estimate that was reasonable. But the reality is we don't have a lot of good, precise way to estimate these funds at this time.
You know, and Steve, there's a lot of important things that are done there at HSEM, like Steve said, the EOC, but the administrative work that's going to be required for the next couple of years on this reimbursement, I mean, tremendous amount of work that's going to continue, you know, no matter when, not only on the state side, but on the local side. So, so there's just a lot being done over there, and the director's doing a very good job. And they've been working pretty much, you know, many times 7 days a week. So we're hoping there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but there won't be for the administrative work for a while.
Yep. So that's it. So those are the two, the funding gaps that if funds were available, we would request support for. Next division is the Division of Emergency Services and Communications. They oversee our statewide 911 system. 911 is obviously, most of us know that's the number you use for emergencies. You call 911, you can text from any phone, and you'll be connected with dispatch within minutes of any type of emergency. Caller ID technology helps us to identify if people can't speak and they're calling 911, so we can identify that there might be a need and send someone to follow up. There's two redundant public safety answering point system call centers, PSAPs is what we call them. We've got one in Concord, one in Laconia, so we have a backup. And what's interesting about these two PSAPs is that they are both operational at all times. So anyone within Laconia could pick up a call, just like anyone in Concord could pick up a call. So it's better than even a hot site that's ready to go. It's active at any point in time. So it's really a great system that we have. The division is split into several different areas. We've got an assistant director that oversees the technical support and data operations sections. This is really the infrastructure that we need behind the 911 system. So the technical support maintains and supports the actual call system, the 911 next generation call center systems. Also, all the connections that we have with the dispatch agencies across the state. The data operations center, they deal with all the databases that run behind these systems to give the telecommunicators the information to determine where to send these calls to provide information to dispatch, to make sure that we get help as soon as possible. And so that includes the automatic location information database, that's the ALI, and then also the GIS database, it's a geographic information system. The other thing that runs in data operations are the statewide emergency notification system, where that's kind of the reverse 911, where that information gets sent out that there's an emergency that people need to be aware of. The operations section is the area that runs the PSAPs, again, those are redundant systems, so there's robust reliability. And they're far enough away that only in a really severe issue would we not have survivability of one location. It's only the most catastrophic issues. But those calls are always coming in, and they're open 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. The Bureau of Interoperability, that's managed by the SWIC, the Statewide Interoperability Coordinator. And they are responsible for overseeing the development of interoperability within our communication systems across the state. And so that's, there's training for first responders that's involved. There's coordination of frequencies and solutions for different technologies that may not communicate well with each other. There's emergency alert messaging coordination. And really connecting all federal, state, and local communication needs into a single coordinated response so that anyone can talk to anyone. That's the ultimate goal. And as you can imagine, that's a challenge with radio and communications just as much as it is with other technologies. And then within that area as well is the radio communication maintenance function. And so they actually engineer and install as well as conduct maintenance on all of the radio system towers and equipment that we have on towers that are leased tower space. So that includes our statewide microwave backhaul system and all the support facilities associated with those, the generators that keep the towers operational when power goes out. They support two-way radio, voice, and data communication infrastructure that's owned and operated by all the divisions in the department. And there's also other state and local public safety partners that they assist with as well.
Steve, I wanted to add, I know that's a mouthful, but I mean, when you think just 911, it really is emergency communications statewide, and they have really expanded the footprint, the training. But when we went through all the demonstrations and events over the summer, they had a communications truck that went out. They downloaded all our helicopter video. They made sure that all the events at the command sites were streamed back to the Emergency Operations Center. So they really have done a tremendous job.
And so the governor's recommended budget for the Division of Emergency Services and Communications for FY22 is $16.7 million, which is a 3.2% increase over 21. And it's for 23, it's $17.4 million, which is a 4.5% increase over FY22. These funds are supported by the 911 fund. That's the 75-cent surcharge on your phone bills, and that supports this area. Of that increase, $700,000 is due to salary and benefit changes in FY23, and then in FY22, $516,000 are due to new operating costs, increased operating costs, as well as DOIT support and service agreement costs for the new P25 compliant land mobile radio system. So we had a capital project that completed last year, which updated all of our radio system to be interoperable following this P25 compliance requirements. And so that system's now up and running, but that also requires service contracts for all the equipment and software that runs behind the system. And so those costs are included here. The operating costs also include some support for the new Mutual Link interoperability system that was purchased using CARES Act funding. It was purchased to help us to communicate securely with the different COVID-19 response areas, whether that was testing centers, vaccine distribution centers, alternate care facilities, all those different areas. This system allowed us to combine video, data, all sorts of different disparate data streams in one area so we could coordinate statewide. And so moving forward, that's going to be very useful system for us to maintain as a state.
So question on the 911 fund is like a dedicated fund that just provides money for the Emergency Service and Communications Division?
That's correct. Yeah, for emergency services and communications.
Okay. And so there's enough money in there to cover all the needs?
There's enough money in there to cover all the needs. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We did, as I mentioned, we had moved a portion of the dispatch expenses to charge against the fund as well. There's not enough to really sustain that in a long-term capacity, but there's enough to sustain that in the 22-23 budget. So we're going to start getting into these areas now where we've made some funding adjustments to ensure that public safety services are funded in 22-23, but we've had to make some decisions because of lack of funding related to general funds, and that was one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. The other interesting part too, I'd like to draw your attention to is, we're all people driven, all the divisions are, and the whole department is, but 911 especially is. They've got 77% of costs are associated with salaries and benefits. I mean, that's a significant piece. And so it's great that we're fully funded. We fully funded all of our full-time positions in this division. So we don't have any additional requests in that regard. Next, we move on to the Division of Fire Standards and Training and EMS. The division, we call it FSTEMs for short. So the division is committed to training, educating, and certifying emergency and community responders to protect the citizens and visitors of New Hampshire. And they cover a vast demographic of first responders, including firefighters, EMS providers, public works, and citizen volunteers. The Bureau of Firefighter Training oversees all fire and rescue certifications. They conduct trainings at the Concord Fire Academy, and then also at our North Country facility in Bethlehem. And then they also are mobile, so they will bring props and conduct certain trainings statewide. So if there's a local department that needs training and can't make it to Concord or Bethlehem, we can go to them and conduct training in their neck of the woods. The Bureau of Emergency Medical Services is responsible for coordinating emergency medical and trauma services. That includes managing the training, testing, the licensing of EMS providers and instructors and training agencies and dispatchers. So they're really kind of an oversight role there. The division's also responsible for collecting data and performing administrative investigations of those licensees. The Bureau of Certification and Support really is providing that administrative function for those two other areas, making sure that things are scheduled and documented and captured appropriately and tracked. And then there's some special projects and compliance work that also happens in the division. You know, the EMS regional ensuring we've got coordination with our EMS regional partners. The Heart Safe Communities program, which is making sure that AEDs are available for communities across the state. And then Project First, which was a grant-funded program that connected individuals who had an overdose with treatment resources within their communities, and also training families on Narcan administration to help try and get that individual to that treatment facility before an overdose occurs. The Division of Fire Standards and Training budget request for FY22 is $8.2 million, which is a 5% decrease over FY21, and $8.3 million, which is a 1%, well, just under 1% increase over FY22. $218,000 of the decrease in 22 is due to a decline in part-time salaries. And $208,000 increase in 23 is due to the salary and benefit increments and the 27th pay period. So that's what's causing the increase. The 22 decrease of $216,000 and $168,000 decrease in 23 are due to miscellaneous decreases in operating costs associated with the delivery of training programs. This is also a division where we've fully funded all positions. If you look at the funding source, the vast majority is funded from the fire fund here. So the fire fund is utilized to support this division for the fire academy, fire and EMS, and also the division of fire safety. We had to reduce some part-time salaries here in fire standards and training because those general fund concerns that we had prior forced us to change the funding of the fire safety division, which is the fire marshal's office, which we'll see as the next division. Because the fire marshal in the last budget, we had moved partially onto the general fund, about 50-50, because last budget, we were speaking to the committee and explaining that the fire fund can no longer support both of these divisions. The revenue stream is flat. The revenues are collected from motor vehicle record requests, primarily from insurance companies looking to do business. And unfortunately, that's not a high growth area. It's a consistent and steady revenue stream. But like our other divisions, the cost of doing business keeps increasing. So a flat revenue stream doesn't help us when costs are increasing, even if it's not at an exorbitant rate of increase. So one of the reductions we had to make because we moved the fire marshal back onto the fire fund 100% was to reduce part-time salaries in FSTEMs. These part-time employees are the instructors. So this will result in a reduction in course offerings. This will be partially offset with move to online course development. So Fire Standards and Training has been looking to incorporate online trainings either in whole or even in part within their existing criteria. And so that'll reduce the costs of some of the courses that they offer. But at the end of the day, there will be a reduction. Where that is will depend on demand. So first and foremost, we want to make sure we offer Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2, the certification courses, because those are required to be a full-time firefighter in the state of New Hampshire. But it's the other courses that might be like the ladder truck, how to operate the ladder truck specialty. I'm making some things up. I'm getting outside my direct knowledge on these things, but there's other specialty type of trainings that won't be offered or would be reduced in its offering. And so that's one of the results of the funding concerns that's impacted fire standards and training.
Well, you know, Stephen, I want to add, you were spot on, but we had to limit some of the training through COVID. As you know, a lot of the building was used for different COVID-related events. So there's going to be a big need moving forward to get these classes up and running, and which the director's paying attention to.
All right. And then last but not least, the Division of Fire Safety. The mission of the Division of Fire Safety is to prevent deaths, injury, and property loss by promoting a safe fire, building, and hazardous materials environment in New Hampshire. And they do this by through education, engineering, investigation, and enforcement. And the division investigates all fires and building collapses and carbon monoxide releases other than automobiles, so carbon monoxide releases in buildings, which cause deaths, and assist any local fire chief, law enforcement, or local governing board when assistance is requested. So they're broken into 4 sections. The Bureau of Investigations is where the fire investigators reside. They investigate all fires and building collapses. In addition, they assist whenever needed. The Bureau of Planning and Support Services, they have several functions underneath them. There's a hazmat unit, which assists communities in developing hazardous materials, hazmat emergency action plans, and also providing information on transportation, manufacturing, and storage of hazardous materials. There's Fireworks Safety and Enforcement Unit, which conducts inspections, investigations, and other activities for the proper use, handling, and storage, and transportation of fireworks for manufacturers and the wholesale of the retail sales of fireworks also. There's a public education section. So they manage a variety of fire, life safety education components. Things like, think about, remember to replace the battery in your smoke detector on daylight savings time. So things like that to help people have a safer fire environment in their homes and in their work. Then there's the Bureau of Building Safety and Construction. And under that bureau, we've got the Engineering and Plans Review section. They're responsible for reviewing plans of all the state-owned buildings, public school projects, healthcare facilities, anything licensed by the Department of Health and Human Services. And they also have to inspect all construction projects for state-owned buildings. And that includes us in the Department of Safety. We work closely with them. If we have a construction project in one of our facilities, we have to also go through and get that permitting process. The Tramway and Amusement Ride Safety section also falls under this bureau. So they oversee the safety of the state's ski industry resources and other amusement rides to ensure compliance with all safety regulations for carnival and amusement ride operators in the state. And then the modular housing program ensures that modular building components are constructed in accordance with building and fire code across the state. The budget request for the Division of Fire Safety for FY22 is $4.5 million, which is a 14.9% decrease from 21, and $4.6 million in FY23, which is a 1% increase over FY22. The largest reason for this decline has to do with a change in the mechanical licensing function. So this budget transfers the mechanical licensing function into the Office of Professional Licensure and Certification in FY22. We work closely with OPLC to make that happen, and both departments felt that it was the right choice, and that's where it belonged. You can see from the funding here, as I mentioned before, in the past, in 20 and 21, the fire marshal had $2.4 and $2.9 million worth of general funds to support their budget. Those funds, we had to make the difficult decision to fund all of the other areas that we've talked about, and we still had have some funding gaps. Regardless, we removed the general funding from the fire marshal, so their functions are in the fire fund now. What's left has to do with the modular building function. The modular building function is a what we refer to as a 125 generally funded area where we need to collect 125% of our expenditures in general funds. And so that's what's left, that small bit. All of the positions within fire safety have been funded. The full-time positions are all there. There were reductions in part-time funding in this division as well. And that's, again, that will result in delays in some of the building and life safety inspection and plan reviews that they're trying to complete. But the programs themselves will continue regardless.
I'm happy to hear that you moved the whatever you call it to
Mechanical licensing.
yeah, that's been going on for how long? to actually move that, but I'm glad to hear it's happened. So Representative Bucco, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I just, what is the source of the fire fund? What is the source of revenue of the fire fund?
The fire fund revenues come from motor vehicle history records that are requested mostly by insurance companies, driving history records.
Thank you, Steve.
So before I conclude here, just the very last page, which is Appendix A, and it's been referred to throughout the presentation. When we presented at the governor's budget hearing, Representative Ober had requested that we provide a crosswalk of two areas that we had mentioned. One is retiree health, the allocation and the changes we made, and the other is DOIT. So we provided that crosswalk here for your reference. Essentially what this shows is how we took the retiree health costs, which were being, the vast majority were being funded by the highway fund, and we allocated them across all of the accounting units where the individuals worked originally to spread those costs to the dedicated funds wherever possible. Again, to help reduce our draw from the highway fund because of the concerns with revenue. Similar to retiree health, we did the same thing with DOIT. We looked at the services being received and we allocated those, some on PC count, some based on what types of systems are operated by the division, and allocated those across the area. And that's why you see some fluctuations that are big between admin and state police, and some fluctuations between the commissioner's office and some other areas. So this was a request at that time, so we provide this information for you so you can take a look at that if you're so interested. But the key thing, just in summary, as the commissioner mentioned in his opening remarks, you know, our mission to continue and enhance public safety and security in New Hampshire, it's going to continue with this budget. We're a large department. It's important, everything that we do. I hope you've seen the breadth of services that are provided here. And the governor's recommended budget does provide us with the funding we need to maintain public safety, and we're not stopping anything. However, there are reductions and delays in service that are going to happen because of these unfunded positions. And that's why, you know, we do formally request, if there's funding available that's available to this committee, that you could really strongly consider funding these positions if anything becomes available during this phase in the budget process. And be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Yeah, Representative Murray, you had a question?
Thank you again. Are your priorities pretty much focused on personnel? I think before someone asked about you coming up with the priorities of if we have to choose which positions to fill, you would give us direction on that. Are there other areas that are non-personnel that you would want to prioritize for us? And Commissioner, you can jump in at any time, but they're primarily personnel
costs. The big exception being the state police fleet, and that's going to be a balance. And so there's not, depending on the funding that's available, will likely change what that priority becomes.
I was going to say the same thing, the personnel and the cruisers.
Representative Heath, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for Commissioner Quinn. Commissioner, this is a tough budget. Monies have been moved around and it seems like it's kind of pieced together. Do you really think that you're really going to be able to adequately perform the job that you need to do based on the amount of dollars that have been provided?
Well, we're doing it today. And, you know, if you look at the slide that's up there, we created this as an agency almost 2 years ago, and we have 7 divisions. And together, senior leadership came up with that vision and mission statement. And what I say at every new onboarding, I try and meet every new employee. There isn't a position here that's more important. We all have different titles and different salaries and grades, but you know, look at Steve Lavoie. Nobody would understand better than me and you know, the impact he has on public safety. And whether you're in the back office of DMV processing financial responsibility, or you're leading the SWAT team, they're all equally important. So I can tell you that the budget's one thing, the people are another. So we have good people, and you know, and they're doing the job today. As Steve said, we believe that we can deliver. But as stated, there's certain areas that that might need more attention, or where you know some of the services might be delayed. But yeah, every single day they're getting it done. So
Thank you.
whatever help, and I appreciate Division 2. I wanted to say this: the focus you've had. I know you've been with us now for over 2 hours, and I know you're looking at it. And you know, it's been like 10 years now that I've worked with Division 2, and this is my first round with the budget. So you know, Steve tried to put forward with me, it's conservative, it's realistic. And the other thing is, every one of these divisions, we work very close with the directors on this. And so understanding what they have to do, they have to try and you know uphold the mission statement. So we're going to do, I will say this, they do their very best every single day, and they will continue to do it. And they appreciate whatever support you can give them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner and Mr. Lavoie. This has been a very enlightening 2 hours, and we really appreciate the time and helping us to understand your needs. And as you can imagine, we will have you back probably sometime next week to delve more into the details of your budget. And we're looking forward to working with you and doing what we can to help not only safety, but all of the other areas that we have to manage. So I appreciate it very, very much. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You're
Madam.
welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Okay, yep, thank you. I just want to remind everybody that we have DOE tomorrow. I'm sure that will be very interesting as well. And then Wednesday and Thursday, we're in session. And then on Friday, we're going to have the university and community college system in. So I know it's going to be a long week and a lot of stuff going on, but we've got to get we got to get through this budget somehow or other. So did you have a question, Mary?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I also have a county meeting, so I'm going to be having 2 computers going. I'm going to be at both meetings at the same time. but I may have to divert a little bit to vote for our county meeting. I think we have a lot to talk about, but I will be there, okay?
Okay, yeah, I know. I'm running into those problems as well, but, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. So that's fine. Representative Murray.
Oop. Oh, thank you. I have my COVID shot on Friday at 2. Will university or education be done by then, do you think? I can't do my shot virtually, so.
Yeah,
wish.
yeah.
But I don't know if we'll be done by, probably we'll leave here by 1:30 or so.
That's a very good question. I'm just really not sure.
Well, I will hang on as long as I can, and if I
Right.
can, I'll try to bring my phone with me to listen in if I can, but I will
Okay.
have to leave by 1:30 to get my COVID, not missing my COVID vaccine,
Now, is this your first or second?
my first.
Okay.
So.
Well, good luck. I had my second one on Saturday, so
How did you feel? They say the second one's got more side effect? Oh,
I had no problem whatsoever with either one of them. I mean, other than, you know, where they put the shot in, that it was sore, but that was it.
that hardly counts, yeah.
Yeah, to me, it didn't count. Representative Lynn?
Yes, just a quick question, just procedural. Do you want me to write up a little something about these two things, or since we're having them come back next week, should I wait until then?
I just write up a little thing that says, you know, we met with the,
Okay.
you know, and they
Yeah,
explained.
no,
what the-
that's
Yeah.
fine. I just wasn't sure what the process was, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
That it doesn't have to be very long-winded at all.
Okay, all right, great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Okay, seeing nothing, we'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
All right,
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yep,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thank you, bye-bye.